tell us about yourself and what's your involvement with AI?
So hi everyone, hi internet. My name is Nick. I guess the biggest interaction I've had with AI is just I've always been interested in technology. I had a relative that was a pretty high senior executive at Microsoft for a long time, and he would always tell me like cool things that like Microsoft was doing, and I was from a very young age really interested in technology. I remember having like an old Apple, like not an Apple II, but like the one that came after that, in the very early 90s when I learned like, the very basics of computing and stuff, and just like being interested in technology is something that's kind of always been a part of me. In 2016, or 2017 really, I was lucky enough to be part of an AI startup that focused on using AI to monitor voice clips. And we would use those voice clips to determine how people related to each other. So basically it was like if you had two people conversing, the AI was listening in the background and was basically instructing both people, not in real time, but like post conversation, like, hey, you asked a lot of questions, or you rambled on for too long, or you did all these like little things. And it was like basically using analytics tools for the purpose of teaching people how to better interact with each other, both in their own culture and through other cultures as well. So that was kind of my involvement with AI. I did that for about 4.5 years. Sadly, the company went away, but I maintained a strong interest in AI. I currently play around with some tools like Midjourney. Stable Diffusion is another one I play around with pretty frequently. I've recently started using like some generative AI tools in my hobbies, like music making. Like I use this thing that the singer Grimes provided, where you can just sing into your phone, and the AI algorithm will just like transform anything you sang into like this beautiful, picture perfect, or whatever the equivalent for sound is, but like perfect replication of like what you sang, but in a professional's voice. So it sounds really cool. So all of a sudden I don't have to use auto-tune anymore. I can just have the AI do it. And I use other tools like Google Magenta, which is like an AI plugin for Ableton Live, which is pretty cool, for like generative music. Sometimes I even help or ask ChatGPT to help me patch synthesizers and VST plugins, which I think is pretty neat. But yeah, that's kind of who I am and what I do with AI and what I've done with AI. And yeah.
Awesome.
All right. There's fear of AI right now all around the society. And not too long ago, just a couple of years ago, there was fear of COVID, right? So a lot of people were fearing the unknown, and now AI is the new unknown. So with that, what are some differences that you see in terms of what we're experiencing with AI and COVID?
Oof. Wow. I mean,
that's a lofty question.
That's a pretty open-ended question. I would say the biggest difference is that people are, how can I say this without being political or anything, but people are embracing AI in a way that a lot of people didn't really embrace the fact. I mean, you don't embrace a deadly disease, but like people are like, hey, it's here, get used to it. Like this is our world now. And you still have people today saying that COVID was just a hoax. Whereas like AI is something that isn't a hoax because you can go on to like Midjourney or the Grimes AI thing that I was just telling you about. And it's real. It's tangible. It's a thing you can click on, or you can
data, right?
Yeah. Or it's not just that, it's something you can try out for yourself. Like COVID, like you might know someone who had it, or you might have had it yourself, or maybe you didn't have it and you're like, okay, I'm good. But like with AI, like you can go play around with it and kind of unleash your own creativity with it. And I think that's pretty cool. Whereas getting sick with COVID was not pretty cool. It kind of sucked.
I mean, with COVID, it's like it's going to, like, there was somewhat of an expectation that it would work itself out throughout the population. Eventually, there would be herd immunity. Right? But it might take a long time. But with AI, it's kind of like there's this acceleration right? So with COVID, it's like it'll reach a peak and eventually like kill out maybe whatever percent of the population, and then everybody else is still alive. But then with AI, there's like this: you're not killing people, but you're like the impact. It doesn't get slower over time; it accelerates, and there's no expectation that it would taper off.
No, because if you combine what the current status of AI is with just the standard, things like Moore's law and stuff, that computing power doubles every, like 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
We're gonna, I don't know if we're ever going to reach that threshold of like when computer chips become too small for us to like fit more and more onto a silicon wafer, but like computers will always get more powerful. And if you just say there's more and more data to process, like computers will just process them faster. And so like, as you said, Alan, the potential for AI to have an impact on the overall like landscape of society just kind of grows exponentially. Yeah,
we're actually reaching an inflection point where it used to be that more data means better output, but we're actually reaching the inflection point where it's like, you don't actually even need more data necessarily because now that reasoning logic is baked into GPT. And now there's this fear that, AI is going to take away jobs. And the counter argument has been that every technological revolution, if you go back in history, like the invention of the car, for example, ended up it did create, kill some jobs, but it created some other jobs. Right. What's different this time? What are the people who are saying that? What are they missing?
Oof. Wow. Another great question. I don't even know how to answer this. I would just say that what is different?
Well, I think the difference here is like, now you have the potential to kill 10 jobs, but replace it with one new job. Right. So you might have previously had a team of like 10 engineers and maybe 2 of them were super senior, and you keep the 2 super senior ones, you get rid of 8 of them. And those 2 super senior are GPT powered, and so you get rid of 8 jobs and you maybe create 2 new jobs that use this tool. In the old times, if with the car invention, maybe you got rid of like these messengers or whatnot, and you created, for every, 3 jobs killed, you created 5 jobs.
Yeah, there's a net positive.
Right. So that net difference is a critical component. You think about Walmart, like they hired so many people, and then you got these companies, all these big tech companies, they're not employing the same number at the same scale as Walmart.
No.
And so the impact on society is pretty significant.
Yeah, I mean, Walmart is the biggest employer in the country, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I don't know if they still are, but they were certainly
at one point. Yeah, and they're probably still in the top 5, if not top 3. I mean, they employ like 10 million people or something, like crazy high number.
Right, but the market cap of these big tech companies is even multiples of that.
True.
So it's like there's this trend towards, it's not just at the big company scales, like even smaller companies, they're starting to downsize, and there's a trend towards these single owner companies where it's like this one creator who can take care of marketing themselves, create their own products, use AI for all the automation. It's just one person.
So do you think it will become like, instead of a large business, it'll shrink down to like a small business in a sense?
Yeah. I mean, small businesses are the backbone of the economy in a sense, but yeah, I don't think it's just the quote unquote creative economy that's going to suffer or kind of turn into a bunch of one-man shops. I mean, we could see this in finance or in anything that doesn't really require like an economy of scale, like a car producer or a computer producer, like to manage one's portfolio, like we could already do it ourselves anyway, but now in the age of AI, like I could literally see like 1-man hedge funds or 2-man hedge funds, because all your wave of analysts and
and you can compete with the big huge hedge
yeah, you can compete with anyone, because if you have the same output just from a data perspective that these big guys have. Like, who cares if you're having a human do that analysis or a computer do the analysis?
Let's talk about the finance space. You have a Bloomberg subscription.
I do.
Wealthfront has been like an automated kind of AI-driven investment advice for portfolios. What's Bloomberg GPT, and what's the value add there?
I mean, I haven't used any of Bloomberg's proprietary AI tools yet. I would like to. But one thing that I could totally see Bloomberg doing going forward is basically being able to better output, like just better content faster. Like being able to quickly say, hey, you know, earnings for 15 big companies was today. And within like 5 minutes of all these companies releasing their quarters 10Q or 10K, you all of a sudden have like actionable data on all these related companies that just get spit out in seconds. And it's all accurate because you have this GPT model or
like
something.
Like a live feed kind of thing that's happening.
Yeah, but more so like when a company has its quarterly meetings or yearly meetings or whatever, they release a report. And if you can just take that PDF, feed it in and say, hey, you know, these 10 companies all reported today. Tell me where the industry's going because they're all related. Tell me who did the best, who did the worst, why, what is the marketplace saying? All that can be synthesized in a matter of seconds now. Yeah. And I think that's going to be really...
Crazy. Very mind-blowing.
Yeah, it's crazy, and it's going to be really useful for like people who like you or I who like enjoy reading about that stuff. And like I don't want to have to like say on the day all the big tech names report. I don't want to have to read an article about Apple, then another one about Microsoft, another one about Nvidia. It's like, here's one report synthesized, 300 words about everything that just happened across all these companies. Here's what to pay attention to. Here's what to ignore. And here's some trends that are either interesting or worrying or anywhere in the middle.
And it's also customizable. So like for you, it could be a certain, you know, group, and then for you, a certain group, and it could be spit out so fast that no one has to wait anymore. Right.
No one has to wait, and content is just going to become better. And so I could see a Bloomberg doing something like that, but I could also see them harassing or harnessing the power of OpenAI's tools or GPT tools to kind of let people who are very curious about the world from a financial perspective go in and do really interesting just things. Like I could say, hey, what happens to this stock or like this index within, you know, 30 days of this other event happening, and bang, it can get spit out in seconds.
Or it could also predict like when there's a drop off, when the S&P or something is starting to dip down, and then at least have a warning so it saves a lot of people money off of something that could have been lost.
I don't think we're ever going to have a model of anything that can accurately predict like black swan events, for example. It's just too impossible. Like we don't know if like a meteor is going to strike tomorrow or like a bomb's going to go off in some major city or something. We don't know. But one thing we do know is that like change happens, and we can kind of model for things like black swan events a little bit better using ChatGPT and how we position like our portfolios and stuff against it. Like I can say, hey, you know, what happens to the S&P 500 on average over the past like 35 years anytime the VIX spikes up more than like 2% on one day? Like what happens in that? I can just query that using natural language into like a Bloomberg terminal or something, and it would spit out accurate data. I think that's fascinating.
And you can also probably zoom in on those little details if you want to find out more on that if you're very curious. Yeah,
so it's giving more power to people who are curious within a boundary of what to be curious about.
Okay. And
I have a quote here. 50% of AI researchers believe there's a 10% or greater chance that humans will go extinct from our inability to control AI. This is from the AI Impact Survey. There's 736 ML researchers from August of 2022. And so if there's a 10% chance of a plane that you get on basically crashing. You would never take that plane. But yet, right now, the prediction is there's a 10% or greater chance that humans will go extinct, or at least 50% of AI researchers believe that. So like what can we do here? Because even like new technologies, new drugs that come into place, they're tested and they have to go through the FDA process before they're even deployed. Planes are tested before you can get on them. But AI is not tested before it's thrown out into the public. Or Sam Altman from OpenAI just threw it out to the public, and just kind of saying, "Hey, let's optimize for speed rather than for safety." What's the complication, or what are the implications for doing this in society? Where we're just throwing it out there, just see what happens. Are the risks perhaps even higher than a plane ride? It may not be death, but it may be job loss at significant scale. It could be lots of other risks. Identity verification thefts, people impersonating each other. You could take 3 seconds of audio clip from anybody and just create an entire monologue about them calling in about whatever, urgent situation.
Or like a hostage situation.
Yeah, all kinds of stuff. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Ellen, I think you would have to break down that what you just said into two different kind of separate questions. Is in one of them, I can say, just releasing AI models into the wild, I could see it being dangerous, but I would think that in the age of like open source software, if a lot of these models are open sourced, that I would think would reduce the risk not significantly, but like slightly, because it's like, okay, we know it's not a black box. We know what this thing is doing and why it's doing it, because we can see how it's built. We can see the schematics. We can see the scaffolding, so to speak.
But isn't that the risk though? Like a lot of scientists are saying that the models are outputting things without even them understanding why it did it. It's like after 50 billion parameters, after 100 billion parameters, you still didn't get what you wanted in terms of like the reasoning capabilities. But then once you hit 150 billion parameters, then all of a sudden it can start reasoning and doing this kind of fancy logic.
Oh, sure.
So it's like, you reach a point where it's like people don't understand why it's happening. So even though it's open source, it's like there's still risk in open source.
Oh, 100%. That does bring up the question of like you were asking, are we actually just like innovating ourselves to death? Are we engineering ourselves to death, which is frightening and fascinating. But I think the interesting thing here is like, if we don't know what this black box is an entire society like just uses this thing and we don't know why it's doing what it's doing. Yeah. There's definitely something there that could say, yeah, we're going to go extinct from it. But what does that actually mean in the sense that like, will the AI become like Skynet and just decide that one day humans are the worst thing that could happen to
Exactly.
Well, this open source and with it being fully available, organizations like 4chan are probably playing around with this, tinkering around. So what do you think so I guess they're like the kind of, sometimes they're doing good for society, sometimes they're doing bad.
Yeah.
You have no idea which side of an argument they're going to take.
Oh my God.
So it's like they're tinkering in the background with something that's open source out there. Like Llama just got released and open source wise. That's the one from Meta, Facebook. There could be random people we don't know about tinkering with it right now.
Right.
Back then, like when the nuclear bombs came out, like countries came together to figure out, we got to regulate this stuff. Like whoever's testing it, we got to put sanctions on them. We got to put limits on them.
Are we going to have that for?
Are we going to have that with AI, or because even China's banning it? And one argument you could say is like, oh well, if we start regulating it, won't we just lose the AI war to China? But then China themselves can't control it, and they're the ones who want control over their people. Even they're banning it. So U.S. in a way is taking the experimental approach. History will determine whether it's the right approach or not. But like, it seems like it's a big gamble for.
And also government too. They're kind of late in the game where a lot of the, I guess, the structure of it, technology has gone so far that there's a lot of issues where, there's harassment and bullying and all this. How is this controlled, or how's this overseen?
Yeah, I mean, so here are the countries that are currently blocking ChatGPT: Russia, China, North Korea, Cuba, Iran, Syria, and Italy. So these are the traditionally communist countries.
Well, not the Italians,
with the exception of Italy.
Right.
But it's like it's almost like this ideology of, freedom, democracy and communism. The freedom ones are the ones letting ChatGPT be free and taking on that risk.
Right.
Is that the right approach?
I don't know, because the problem with that is we won't learn if it was the wrong idea until it actually proves itself to be the wrong idea.
Exactly.
And at that point, we're screwed, right? It's like, okay, we have this nuclear bomb and we don't know if it's going to work or not, so let's test it. And then, we test it and we're all dead now. Uh-oh.
Well, yeah,
that's coming after us.
Right.
Basically.
And that's the question. Like, what can we learn from history? In a way, when nuclear technology came out, humans did the right thing. We came together and regulated it, and punished the ones that were. Of course, there's a little bit of hypocrisy with America, but it's at least under control. There has been no nuclear war since 1942 when the first bomb was dropped.
Right.
Now with AI, are we experiencing that same level of urgency, or do we still need to sound the alarm bell?
I mean, I think we need to sound the alarm bell, but I don't think it's being treated with the same urgency because there's a capitalistic benefit. Well, there's a capitalistic benefit, and then there's also this whole thing that our lawmakers are not necessarily the most technologically savvy bunch.
They're more lax. They're focused on other.
They're focused on other things, but I think.
Were lawmakers aware of nuclear technology? I don't think they were physicists.
But they probably at that time they weren't overwhelmed with all kinds of different information. So when world-renowned nuclear physicists came in and said I built this bomb with other world-renowned nuclear physicists, it blew shit up. And it's really dangerous. And don't use it. Don't use it. It's bad. This is a one-hit KO or something.
Okay, so
do not use this.
So nuclear technology is it's clearly bad. You could see it. With AI, it's you can't tell if it's bad or good. There are some good, right, and then there's some bad, but it's unknown.
Right.
So
whereas the unknown with nuclear energy is okay, what do we do with it after we drop this bomb? Whereas I'm sure when they were going through the testing phases in Nevada and in the Pacific Islands and stuff, I'm sure someone in our government, not just in the military, but someone on the Senate Foreign Intelligence Committee or the Senate Armed Forces Committee probably saw the bomb go off or one of the tests go off and went back to DC and told all their friends this thing is real. Let's not use it anymore because it's really powerful. Yeah. It's too powerful.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of surprised Russia, China, they're banning it. I guess it's more banning it for the people or the group, the citizens, netizens. Mm-hmm. But I think you would think it's an oxymoron because I could see Russia and China, the power heads, the political, use it to manipulate and warp it to their benefit.
Right, it's the people can't use it, but we, the government, can use it. So they're triggering it while telling everybody that you can't use it.
But the government in the U.S. are smart that they use
totalitarian governments,
exactly,
right?
The masses.
Of course, they're going to use it.
All right, so if you had to say the number one method for making money with AI, at least at the company level, what would you say it is? I would tend to think it's something to do with claiming that spot of intimacy with humans. Whoever can influence the human mind to influence you in terms of what to purchase and stuff like that. Whoever's that AI friend, that AI girlfriend, that your confidant
taps into the compassion and empathy.
Yeah, if you have a personal assistant that you have a human AI relationship with the most, whoever controls that the most potentially can make the most money.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, you see it on YouTube now, like all these like just I get my YouTube feed filled with them. I don't know why or how they got into my feed because I don't really, watch that kind of stuff. But like sometimes I'm scrolling, it's like a random "Did you know?" and it's narrated by a computer. I'm like, yeah, that is completely built by AI, right? Someone got this fact or just said, "Hey AI, go find me interesting fact about iPhones." And make me a 30-second clip about iPhones, use the computer to narrate it, and boom, 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 boom. All these like little short clips in the age of TikTok are just created in seconds. And those can be really powerful in influencing people.
I know.
And it's not just adults, it's children
it's
too.
It's much more children than adults because we have reasoning. We like people our age, I mean, you guys are a little older than me, but like we grew up in a much more analog world, whereas like I didn't have my first phone until I was 15, right? Like I just didn't need one. And now like, I mean,
it's your life.
It's your life.
It's your appendage.
Right. It's a part of you. It's becoming even more prevalent among kids at a younger and younger age.
Well, there's a lot of addiction and then there's a lot
100%.
of attention deficit disorder because you can't just sit there. Even I feel the same way too when I'm watching all these like stories and reels. It's only 15 minutes or those ads. It's just like your attention span becomes that much more shorter.
Oh yeah, and that's by design.
Yeah.
And
it's like the gambling, right?
Yeah, it's quick little dopamine hits.
Yeah.
Consistent, quick, and you can take 100 of them, and it fits in your pocket. Yeah. What's not to love for an advertiser?
Yeah, and humans are becoming more and more lonely in this digital age. Oh, yeah. And the opportunity or gap for this AI friend to fill and become your confidant is very high.
But do you think in the future, I don't know, at least I believe that it probably will be a less depressing place because now you have these chatbots or these,
right.
things so that will fill in like taking away loneliness and
right. But there's a risk there. Like you'll be friends with your AI bot, but now that AI bot is controlled by Microsoft or something, and we
can't relate.
And they're influencing you to buy certain things, and like that could be a good or bad thing. But you don't. It might not be another company, right. Or maybe what if they try to like nudge you to give you negative thoughts, and then you go into a depression, and then it nudges you to suicide. Or what if it nudges you to do a school shooting?
Well, that's why there needs to be like an ethical, right? Kind of like where there's like government, or as you were saying before about the G4, where a group of people have to regulate.
Right. We're at this juncture where it's like Sam Altman's going to Congress asking for regulation. I don't know how effective it's going to be, but what are your thoughts there?
Well, I would just, I want to address what Carissa said, but I will address what you said first. Sam Altman, I think, is going to Congress for two reasons. One, because he does have a moat. No matter what he says, he does. And he wants to protect that moat, right? He doesn't want some upstart from the UK or Canada or another Western nation to come along and eat his lunch. Right, because he came out and said Google.
Wants to protect it.
Yeah, basically. I mean he's sitting on top of something that just 50% of it sold for $10 billion. Like,
well, he himself said he doesn't own any equity. He doesn't
own any equity, but he's still thinking about his job, right?
Yeah, future jobs.
Yeah,
his role. Right, whether he gets paid or not, it's his role as like a kind of like the leader of this AI.
Yeah, he gets to have more than his 5 seconds of fame because he's sitting atop this thing. And if you take that away, is he still going to be this like same person? I don't know.
We're all fearful. It doesn't matter if you're a creator or not.
So yeah, I think he's going to Congress. I think it's a good thing that he's going and saying like, hey, we do need to be regulated. But like, you always have to think like, is he asking for regulation because he's only fearful what the technology can do, or also fearful that someone could come along and eat his lunch? That's what I'm kind of fearful of. Because it seems that right now he and the OpenAI team are bound by some ethics, and I would hate to see what could happen with this level of technology with someone who is not as ethical as he is or purports to be.
You need your checks and balances.
For sure.
For it.
But what you said earlier, Chris, I thought I just got back to a book that I hold near and dear to me called Ready Player One.
Oh, what's that?
It's a movie now.
Oh, okay.
But it's basically about this world where the outside world has gone to shit. Oh. And everyone just has these like these goggles, almost
VR kind of
VR, AR goggles, whatever the heck you want to call them. And they live inside this virtual world. Yeah. And it's almost used as an escape or an escapism mechanism for people to say, you know what?
It sounds like The Matrix.
Yeah.
It's almost like The Matrix, but because the book itself was all about like being a homage to like anime culture and gaming culture from like the 80s, 90s, 2000s, like everyone's like, oh, this is great. You know, you can hide in your little world and you can pretend to be a superhero or pilot a giant robot or whatever. And everyone's like, oh, it's great because it's what I wanted to do since I was a kid. But then you kind of realize that this book is not a homage. It's more of a warning and saying like, we are becoming, like you said, an appendage to our devices or vice versa.
And you're not able to think for yourself. Like, as you said, our age, we grew up where we had to use our minds for creative problem solving. But now, because there's so much information everywhere, and if you're curious, you can go and find it somewhere else.
Right.
Instead of actually thinking about it, using your brain to see what the loopholes or what other options there are in the future.
It's a warning about how people are becoming too increasingly addicted to technology that's becoming more and more and more powerful, more and more prevalent in their lives. And it gets to the point where people are so disillusioned with the real world, so to speak, that they just put on these goggles and just
zone out, tune out. Well, it's like basically all this technology is like a Band-Aid. It's a crutch. And when you take that away and you sit there by yourself, you realize, oh my God, I can't even be with myself. I don't know what to do with myself.
I don't know who I am.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the scary part about, facing life. And it's just like you can, as you said, like have all this candy and it rot you inside out. But then once that's gone, you realize, who am I?
Right. What I've been doing eating all this candy. Yeah, it felt great in the moment, but now my teeth are rot. Now I'm fat. Now I don't. I have this massive like sugar rush come down and it's
withdrawal symptoms.
Right.
I think it's the withdrawal. It's not only the drug epidemic, but it's like the technology epidemic. So you have technology withdrawal, you have drug withdrawal, all these like different vices.
Yeah.
All right, this new movie.
It's been out a couple of years.
Okay. This movie, Ready Player One, you've seen it.
Yes.
It's in the AI space. What's the key takeaway from that?
The key takeaway is, at least for me, it was a warning that, as technology becomes more and more powerful, eventually we are going to get to a point, and we even might see it tomorrow when Apple comes out with this new device, that if people have the ability to basically shut themselves into this like digital world, they will, because in the digital world, you can be anything, do whatever you want. It is your own life. It is your own world. You can manipulate it as you see fit. But the second you take those goggles off and you're back in reality, like, damn, reality sucks for a lot of people.
Real life is depressing, and the virtual life is you could be anybody you want.
Exactly.
If you're fat, you could be skinny. If you're ugly, you could be pretty.
Right.
I think that's why there's video games, right? After work, you just decompress. You just go zone out.
Right.
And do.
But I would say that video games, they're not as bad because that, yes, while you are immersed, there's a limit because, your controller might run out of battery or you have to get up and use the bathroom or whatever. But like when you're in this virtual world with like something over your ears, something over your eyes, like over your mouth, like, so you can't really experience the real world. Like at what point do you just say like,
what's the limit?
Not only what's the limit is, why would I ever go back to reality? why would I ever kind of take the mask off and be in reality when I can just kind of manipulate my own world or like interact in a way that I feel comfortable with interacting? Because in this book and in the movie, it's not just like someone's in their own world. They're part of this massive digital world, like an internet. But in this internet, you could only, like, if you wanted to just hang out with your friends, you could, right? There's no one that's going to come and like, you know, come and destroy your character or whatever. Like, you could just do your own thing and hang out in your own world and do whatever you want. But reality has this thing that you can't really control everyone around you. You can't control your environment no matter how much you try.
I think they slipped in the technology because you see more and more nowadays, humans can't even relate to each other.
Oh, yeah.
It's such an awkward situation.
Try to face that.
Oh, yeah.
Awkward situation where they have to go to their devices because they feel awkward if they don't.
Oh, yeah. I mean, how many times have you gone to a restaurant and you see like people on their phones, like not even talking with each other, like, and that as a single guy, that is the biggest kind of headache to me when it comes to dating in this world is like, I'll bring a girl to a restaurant or to a bar and I'm trying to get to know her and all she's doing is It's like, okay.
It's very rude and disrespectful too.
Well, the problem is I think it's become more and more ingrained and more or less and less disrespectful because people are just so used to doing it.
So it's like a habit.
It's a habit, and it's like there's no one showing up to say like, hey, put your phone down. And you know, if I go out with my friends sometimes, even do like a small restaurant or something where like there's a game on TV or something to like inherently distract us from our phones, we tend to migrate towards our phones anyway and eventually. And that's scary because, you know, it seems that this is the biggest provider of dopamine in existence. Screw any drugs, any substances, like this thing is way more powerful, way more potent.
And those algorithms work because they know what you like.
And they know what we
Wait,
like.
so let me play devil's advocate. Like, what's the downside for being so immersed into some digital world that's not real?
You lose your humanity. What makes you human?
What does that mean? You lose your humanity.
You by not acknowledging what's going on around you in a real sense.
Oh, like helping someone out, like
well,
compassion, empathy.
That too, but it's more like, say, as a completely analogous or weird example, but I think you'll get where I'm going with this, is like, say, in here in your apartment, you always have access to perfect weather and you don't ever have to go outside. One day your power goes out and it's raining outside. You're going to have to face the music and understand that, oh, it's raining outside.
So you're saying it's like at some point you're going to have to exit the fake world, the virtual world.
Right.
And you won't be prepared to face what's in the real world.
Correct. Because
so the unpreparedness is what the problem is.
So the tools.
Right. Because eventually, because we're all so immersed in these devices, you get to a point where you don't know how to interact with people.
Well, I think that was a great example of the pandemic that happened.
COVID,
where it took away basically your freedoms. And what are you saddled with?
People didn't know how to socialize after they didn't socialize for like 2 years.
Yeah, they just knew how to socialize via Zoom, which...
But you could argue it's an adjustment and, you know...
For sure.
You know... But the impact on kids, I think, is biggest because when you're trying to develop that, the socializing at like age 5 or 7, and then 2 years are taken away from you. That's a lot of socializing that you lose out on.
Right, but I don't think COVID was the kind of tipping point. I think we were kind of headed that way already.
True.
Right, because again, these things have been around forever, right? At least for, you know, the first iPhone came out in what, 2007? So, you know, people born after the invention of the iPhone, they can vote already, right? So, like, that's a long, or actually, yeah, they can vote now. It's 18 years. But now it's like that entire generation of people that have been brought up 2-3 years old when that happened, as cell phones and personal technology become more and more prevalent in society overall, that gets reflected in the youth faster than anything else, because young people are impressionable. Young people want to do what they see other people doing. It's natural.
There's also a lot more stressors. They said data shows that young kids now have a lot more stress environmentally, climate-wise, politically, day to day. And so I think all those stressors, it feeds the narrative of going to your phone, trying to figure out how do I become socially active,
How do I become who I want to become, and how do I, be the change I want to see in the world, so to speak. Yeah. But
let's transition to jobs.
Sure. Okay.
So whose jobs are going to get replaced by AI? Is it certain industries? Is it younger, older? What are your thoughts there?
Well, I was actually having this conversation with my dad today, believe it or not, because I hypothesized that, older, more knowledgeable workers who understand technology are going to be the ones to benefit. And the younger people who want to join companies and grow from, a junior to a mid to a senior, that path has just been eradicated, right? Like I have a friend who, I won't say what company he works at, but he works in the medical field, and he's a software engineer. And he was just like, a couple weeks ago, we fired all our mid and junior level designers. I said, why? And he's like, well, because we have this like design technology powered by like Midjourney and Stable Diffusion and all these other cool AI tools. And you just need like 1 or 2 senior level guys who know how to manipulate, or not just guys, but people, but who know how to manipulate this technology. And they can replace that like a whole army of juniors and mid-level guys, because, they can just say, hey, I have a query I need something to look like this, and give me 500 variations, and the computer can do it just like that. You don't need to delegate that task to a whole bunch of junior people and say, hey, come up with designs, and we're going to use one.
But I think like the top senior people, they're also getting rid of them. They're skimming the fat off because they're getting paid a lot. So I think it's more not the lower, but like I guess below.
Yeah, but like, so what skills should people in the audience upskill on in order to prepare themselves? Because it seems like AI is getting rid of all technical skills, whether it's junior level engineering skills, junior level design skills. It's just getting rid of that. And it seems like it's more about communication, your ability to influence and drive alignment,
marketing and sales.
It's just like higher level, you're not doing the actual grunt work. Right. AI is going to do the actual grunt work. It's more about how do you strategize and how do you influence someone to allocate a certain budget to go in a certain strategic direction.
Sure.
Do you think it's networking and everything?
It's definitely relationships. When you're making a sale, you got to lean on your connection to people who can, you can close a sale with.
But I would think also AI can do it themselves too. Like they can train the AIs to interconnect.
Yeah, sales bots kind of
each other. Then you don't need the
middle. Well, you still do, because I mean, at the end of the day, like, I want to be convinced by a human to do something. I'm not going to like look at the computer's reasoning. You should buy this product for A, B, and C. It's like, okay, the computer's telling me this.
Well, when you have a relationship with the AI, that's when you will make that sale.
Right. And maybe that's a couple of years off. I don't know. Maybe that could eventually become the norm, right? Maybe a whole bunch of salespeople could just go the way of the horse and wagon. I don't know.
Right. So then what's the skill set? Because yes, older people might benefit more because they're higher up in the career progress. But the advantage of young people is they can act super fast.
Right.
A lot of this AI news, like I'm learning from 17-year-old kids who are, on top of it right when it gets released, and they've already figured out 10 different use cases. Like they can move really quick, and they don't have any, I guess they're not paid to do anything else. And so like
they have the most time.
Yeah, so they're experimenting with different, ways of doing it. So you could argue that, there is some benefit there in terms of their being on top of what's changing. So the older people have to, react kind of like 6 month delay when something's announced. Meanwhile, they can act a little bit faster. The question is, who's better positioned? And it's a tricky situation to be in.
For sure. I would say one skill set that people should have that, in a previous job I had when I worked in a conversation technology company, young people they're great with technology and they're very fast, but because they grew up in a much more digital world than any of us did, they really don't know how to communicate. They really don't. Especially you take a kid who's like a freshman in college or like, middle or high school studies, you take the phone away from them for more than like 3 hours. Can they have a conversation with you?
Or to forget their phone. Like no one will ever forget their phone. They're like, where did it go? I'm going to trace whatever it is to get back my phone. Instead of saying, okay, I know where it is, where I left it. I'm just going to leave it there and go about my day and come back a couple hours.
Right. It's this being able to not always be connected. And that's a tough ask for people in an increasingly, if not fully digital world or digital economy.
I think it would get even harder and harder too.
Oh, 100%. So I would think that the skill to stand out is, hey, you should know how to be able to communicate with someone older than you or younger than you in your company or in your job or in a sales pitch or what. You're just in a conversation with friends, because like if you don't know how to have a conversation by the time you're like 23 or 24 years old, like you're screwed. Because the older generation, people like us or the people that like our parents or whatever, like, they have an expectation. They're not going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah.
And
there's also like in America, there's this huge thing about ageism, and will AI be able to detect that through, voice activation, and like how do you maneuver through that? I guess that's why there's like those face app things, like
ageism is definitely a problem.
Yeah.
But I think for young people the biggest skill is still communication, because some of those people, even if the older people don't make it into companies, like they're still actors within the overall economy in bedrocks in our communities and stuff, and they're not going away anytime soon.
And they have experiences.
And they have experiences, but it's more like if a kid coming out of school, high school, college, whatever, doesn't really have that like ingrained social ability because they've grown up glued to this thing. How are they ever going to be able to like interact with people on a much more macro scale? And I think that teaching them how to kind of live in an analog world or
balance.
Giving them that balance, because
hey, like there are more due to like climate changes, there's going to be more outages and more like catastrophe. What's that going to do?
There's definitely going to have like, or they're going to be like climate or because of climate, there's going to be like forced migrations from one place to another.
Exactly.
And it's like,
wait, before we get to the climate, like, can we tune in on communication? It's a very broad skill. So we're talking about what exactly in communication? Is it your ability to acknowledge the other side and handle differences in opinions and respectfully engage in dialogue? Or is it your ability to speak without stuttering? What exactly are we?
I think it's both of those, and it's also
body language.
It's body language.
Eye contact.
It's everything that you should know how to do in terms of like how you like hold a conversation or a debate or something with somebody else, and how do you kind of comport yourself?
Just because you could do that doesn't mean you'll get a job.
Oh, clearly.
So like what is it that people need to upskill on besides being able to speak English?
No, I think it's what
coherently?
you said back then is like about what's it called?
Handle conflict.
Not even handle conflict.
Avoid
like,
escalation.
Yeah, that too, but like how to influence. I think that's your number one.
Influence and alignment is what comes to mind for me. Just curious if anything else that to add to that.
Yeah, for me, I would say, because people have kind of been in this digital world for so long and kind of able to control what they want to see and what they want to watch or listen to, like the how do you say it? Like the negative elements of human relationships are essentially abstracted away. Like, I don't like what someone is saying to me on a phone call.
Cut them off.
I can just hit the red button and bang, I don't have to hear from them.
Well, that's what's happening now in human interaction is when you don't like the opinion of someone else, you basically
you block them, or you downvote them or anything, or you
just simply don't talk to them, and then you're not friends with them.
Right.
And it used to be where you can agree to disagree, but now because there's a huge side of extremes.
So in a way, like the huge divide between the left and the right in this country, for example, is making it even worse in terms of the people's ability to tolerate viewpoints that are different from theirs. And it'll affect their ability to communicate and influence and drive alignment with executives in a company.
Well, that's why there's snowflakes, right? Snowflakes or being victimized. It's like they can't handle the facts and the data. And when the facts and the data are spit out at them, they have a total mental breakdown, or they just basically walk off the set.
Right, because they have always had this ability through technology to just be like, okay, I'm leaving, goodbye.
Yeah, but with human interaction, you can't really do that. You can try and persuade, as you said, or influence them or navigate them to try to see it through your point of eyes. But if they're so hell-bent or very secure in their opinion, it
makes it hard.
Yeah, it makes it very hard.
So
and difficult. No one wants to be in those awkward situations.
Right.
You want to get out of it right away.
Exactly.
But in life, you have to go through those process of being uncomfortable. That's how you learn as a human.
Yeah, that's how you grow. Yep. And I think that's something that's been lost on a lot of people. I don't want to sound like the angry old man yelling at the cloud or whatever, but it's like a lot of people, younger and younger, have grown up with this ability to just effectively tune other people out.
Yeah, what about? Close the curtain. Oh, okay.
And through this ability to just tune people out, that's influencing their ability to communicate with other people in the real world. And effective communication in the real world is by and far like the most important job skill one can ever have, at least in my opinion. Because like if you can't get along with people, or you can't like align yourself with someone who you may disagree with politically or economically or whatever,
especially your boss, right? Like, keep it to yourself and walk away. You gotta.
No, you have to deal with your boss. Exactly. So like if you don't know how to deal with your boss, even when like he's not against you, but just having that meeting of the minds and coming out with like, okay, this person's thinking this way, this person's thinking this way. How do we bring them together? How do we bring them together and, create actionable outcomes in a way that both people are happy or both people are understanding of what's going on? Yeah. Well, not just compromising, but just getting an understanding of like through conversation, who's doing what, why are they doing something, and like how can I help them? And it's hard. Communication is not easy. But by having these devices that effectively can be used to tune other people out or just kind of like interact with no one but yourself, like you're kind of losing that, right? In conflict resolution and mediation is really important in life, because if you don't, like, you're never going to have like a partner. You're never going to be able to interact with other people. You're not going to
thrive.
You're not going to thrive. And that's going to be pretty hard. So yeah, learn to communicate and learn to spend a lot of time away from your digital devices, because you will grow.
Because he said so.
Because I said so.
So let's transition to education then. AI in education. ChatGPT can now write essays for you, and teachers are going haywire that their students are not kind of thinking for themselves. How important is writing an essay anyway? And so what is the impact of ChatGPT and communication? We established the ability to communicate with each other, handle differences is really important as a skill because AI is going to do all the technical stuff. So then what is the education system going to do to prepare us for this new age? Oof. Like, are they teaching the right things? Does there need to be education reform in this country?
I mean, that's a very broad and somewhat loaded question. Yeah, I think there needs to be serious education reform at all levels, from pre-K all the way up to college. But in terms of like how that can relate to AI, like I do worry that maybe we're teaching our kids the wrong things, or basically teaching them to solve tomorrow's problems with yesterday's solutions. And that's not inherently a bad thing because people can only teach what they know. So I don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. So how can I teach someone to be prepared for that tomorrow when I don't know what it's going to bring?
True. Only the AI bots can, right? You would think.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, then the AI will become like Skynet and to say, hey, you know what? All those humans are, pesky little things. Let's get rid of them all.
Well, I think it'll be like the jobs. Like, there's not going to be as many teachers. It'll be fewer. They're going to be cut in probably like good 75% would be gone because now there's AI training mentor bots on Khan Academy.
Yeah.
And so I think, honestly, it's going to go back to like homeschooling. People are not going to go to school. They're just going to sit at home, just like a job, kind of like the pandemic sort of thing. But you'll have like a AI assisted bot to monitor and watch after. And if you're doing not so good things, the AI bot would catch you because there'll be cameras everywhere. But I think it would save on time and money. And then I guess for socialization, they would have breaks. And I think those breaks would be after school, after 3:00. I don't know, maybe those times will change, but you learn a lot more. Someone was saying for homeschooling, you learn a lot faster rate because you don't have to travel to school. You get at least 90% of it done within a quarter of the school year, either half or a quarter of the school year, because most of it's logistics going from.
And it's not only logistics, it's also how could I say this? Like the dynamics of a classroom.
You're becoming
like
that
you
are
said, an
huge
appendage because like there might be one or two super smart people in the class,
not able to think for yourself,
and one or two people who are not.
Our age,
They're at the other end of that spectrum.
Needs tailored to
and you can say, okay, take the smart kids, throw them into AP classes, or you can take the people that need a little more help and throw them into a little individualized room or whatever.
Or what other options there are.
Then you still got like 20 other kids who are not.
It's a warning about how people are becoming
the same academically,
but
they all have different
interests
and hobbies and
technology
ways
is
of
becoming
seeing
more and more powerful, more and more prevalent
that
in their lives.
Influences,
and it gets to the point
how they
where
learn what they learn.
People are so disillusioned
with
with
the
the
excited about it.
real
It's like,
world,
hey,
so to
like,
speak. That
person
they just put
A
on these goggles and just
might not be great at math, so we're not going to place them in like the class with
basically
all
technology is like a Band-Aid.
the
It's a
super
crutch.
smart people.
And when you
But
take that
oh my
away,
god, they
and
have
you sit
like
there by yourself, you
insane
realize,
gift
oh my
for
God,
languages,
I can't
but we
even
can't really
be with myself. I don't know
quantify
what
that. We
to
can't
do with
measure that.
myself.
So
I don't know who
they're
I
going to
am.
be stuck in with the rest of the
And
group.
I think it's more
scary
like
part
engagement.
about
I think is
Right.
the number
facing
one
life
thing,
and
right? So with AI
like,
bots,
you
I
can,
think there'd be a lot
you said,
more
like,
engagement.
have all this
I
candy
think a lot more
rot
people,
you inside out.
a
but
lot
then
of kids,
once that's
will
gone,
actually
realize,
fully
who am I?
realize
Right.
their potential.
What I've
instead of
been
sitting
doing,
there
eating
bored
all
to
this
death,
candy,
waiting
it
for
felt great in the
others.
moment.
The
but,
ones that are
you know,
super
now my
smart
teeth are
are
rot,
being
now I'm
challenged
fat,
instead of
now I
being
don't,
lazy.
I have
So
this
you'll
massive
have
like
I think
sugar rush
honestly,
come
in the
down.
future,
and
a
it's-
more robust
withdrawal
community
Right.
Maybe even more productive. It's not only the drug epidemic,
but how can you distinguish the smart kid in the school,
epidemic.
in the class, with the dumb kid in the class who's using ChatGPT and writing an essay that looks better than what the smart kid wrote himself?
Okay.
Kirsten, can you turn everything off?
Yeah. I mean,
And usually around the 30-minute mark.
that's a big one, and I think a lot of schools are having to struggle with that right now. And saying like,
wait. My question is, does it even matter that you're smart? Because if you can use a tool to get the same outcome or even a better outcome than someone who's smarter than you, then in a way, you're smarter than the person who's smarter than you.
Right. Yeah, I guess the level playing field is
right. It kind of boils down to that question that Bill Gates answered once when he said, "Would you really rather hire like the smartest programmer or the laziest programmer?" And Gates was like, "I'll hire the laziest guy every fucking time because that lazy person will figure out the fastest way to automate what they need to do and go on and do something else. Whereas the smart person might come up with like a super ingenious, awesome solution. The lazy person's already automated it.
Right. So that's the thing. We have to rethink our definition of what's a smart person.
Right.
Because if that smart person is someone who uses a tool to automate things that and get a better outcome, in a way, it's like whatever gets the view to the better outcome is what makes you smart, not what your intellectual reasoning capacity is.
Right. I mean, and that's definitely sad at one level because, there are always going to be people who are mentally exceptional and not giving them a platform to, I mean, in a way, giving them a platform is a bad thing because they're, we've all been in public school classrooms where like the one kid that we know, he's going to go to MIT or he's going to go to Stanford. He just answered all the questions. Everyone else is like, okay, today that person's just going to run the classroom and we're just going to sit in the back and,
just watch it happen.
We're just going to watch it happen and we're going to be great. But at the same time, like that's taking away from the mental development of a lot of other people.
That's true.
But kind of where I was going with that is like, as Alan said, like it could be considered smarter to be able to just be like, hey, I know what my limitations are and I know the tools out there that are available to me and what they can do. And I'm going to basically use what I can to do well. Like that is a measure of intelligence. But I guess for all the really super smart people out there who don't really use technology as much, well, don't know what to tell you.
Intelligence doesn't matter anymore because we have artificial intelligence. And if you can use that tool to get better outcomes, that seems like where things are going.
Right. And I mean, there needs to still be a place for human intuition and understanding because remember, the computer is imitating us. We are imitating the computer. And what's interesting is a lot of like, I think back to this chess example that I told you about a few weeks ago, where it showed that this deep mind algorithm actually validates the ideas that the best human players can put forward, as the human players aren't good enough to be able to beat the computers that are powered by like Monte Carlo algorithms and stuff, which are standard brute force, like best move. But it turns out that the humans' ideas of like positional play, sacrificing, and like very human concepts, tricking your opponent, are still worth it, but you just can't execute it as well as a computer can. So it shows that humans are intelligent. It's just that we do need that helping hand. And in terms of academia, maybe that helping hand will help that one kid who, has crazy ADHD like me, be able to actually like focus and express themselves in a way that is palatable for academic consumption, so to speak. Or it might at the same time help the person who is way ahead of their grade be even further ahead of their grade and might go to college at like age 12 or something. Like by all means, like anything the tool can do to kind of advance the human, I'm all for, right?
Mm. All right, let's transition to the last question. Like, what can the audience do to prepare for this age of AI? Some of them, are in school. Some of them are trying to get jobs. It's AI is impacting in digital in general has impacted the dating landscape. Relationships are, can assist in terms of how you communicate with each other.
Disagreements.
Jobs are at risk. So what are we going to be in a situation where everybody's single, talking to a bot, and struggling for a job? What's happening? Where are we going?
What would be a great thing would be if the AI bots could assist humans to connect on a human level basis, like together. Like the stuff that we just talked about how the younger generation is not able to like read cues and stuff. The AI bot can assist and say, hey, like you should look at the eye, eye contact, put down your phone, like all those little nudges of like, hey, like they're reading a little sensitive or awkward. Maybe you should, blah, blah, blah. I recommend you, encourage them.
Yeah, so assisting in communication, I think, seems like a big opportunity for good for AI. The risk is that the humans end up falling in love with with the middle person, which is the assistant.
Right.
So that's when you tell me about boundaries, right? There has to be boundaries and limitations set at a certain distance, kind of like a mentor and a mentee or a guide.
So speaking of boundaries, how do you set boundaries with the AI as we become closer and closer with AI, as we volunteer more and more information with ChatGPT or other tools? How do we set proper boundaries?
I guess if it's too much like TMI or vulnerabilities, there should be a level of like 1, 2, and 3. And if you hit like maybe the gray area of 2, the AI bot can be like, well, I'm not here to disclose. I cannot.
I am not a therapist.
Exactly. Please contact your therapist here. Here is you could recommend a therapist.
Yeah, here's a local mental health practitioner that can help you.
Yeah, exactly.
But that costs money, and ChatGPT is free. Yeah. And the expectations of humans and the capabilities of ChatGPT to be eventually become a therapist and have that insight that's better than what a paid therapist might provide. We're on track for that.
Oof, that's terrifying.
In fact, it might already be in place in some cases.
Probably is.
Like just redirecting somebody to go towards a human is not a route that is feasibly realistic because it costs money
and time and a whole bunch of other things.
So we're moving in the direction where people are going to become more and more reliant with the free option, which is a very effective free option, but it's a bot.
And it's not like, I think everyone's expectations, hopes, and dreams are on the bot.
Yes.
We can't do that. It's just like the appendage of holding, having the iPhone. We want all our hopes and dreams realized in this, tiny iPhone, but it's not giving that to us.
Yeah, I think on this boundaries question, it's like the most we can do is really just become aware that information that we're sharing is to a bot. And even though it could be good at what it's doing, you just have to keep reminding yourself that you're a human, right. And you don't want to be mindful. You don't want to fall into the trap of
but if you're in a vulnerable situation, let's just say like you're very sad or depressed.
This is the issue.
When you actively reach out, or the AI bot reaches out to you and senses it. That's a really scary thing.
Yeah,
like the Siri can hear you. Like Siri will be whispering like, "Hey, so I hear you had a hard day today." It's like, where did that come from?
Yeah, and then now you're developing a relationship with a bot instead of a human. Yikes. So it's just kind of like it seems like it's gonna happen. You can't avoid it, but you just can only be aware of it for now, and then see how it develops, and then kind of adjust accordingly.
Or maybe you have like shock therapy where you wear bands where it just like reminds you like, hey, snap out of it. This is too deep.
It reminds me. I don't know if either one of you guys have seen the new Blade Runner movie, but there's one scene when Ryan Reynolds' character is basically interacting in his home with like what's supposed to be his like digital assistant / digital girlfriend / digital like whatever, and she changes clothes. She shows him everything he wants to like ever visually desire in a woman. And at one point, he reaches out to touch her,
but it goes through.
And it goes through. And he basically snaps out right then and there and says, "Oh, she's fake." But you know, I don't.
I guess that's more of a visual cue, but like for mental, how do we snap out of that mental cue? I guess that's the hard thing.
Right, and as people's lives become more and more and more dependent on technology and on these devices, like, are we crossing over a point of no return? Like crossing the Rubicon? Are we getting to a point of no return?
I think we're midway there. It's in the gray patches, the gray areas. So it's like, how do you, right, we bring it up the segue of like regulations and like, yeah, how does that all?
I do agree. I think we have passed that point of no return and we're on track to it. And the most we can do is just be aware of where things are going and just set proper expectations, because as this male actor who reached out into this virtual character became upset. Now that's just one consequence. It could be a lot worse than that.
Yeah,
but if you set proper expectations and you constantly remind yourself that what you're dealing with is AI.
It's also like, how do you contain or regulate emotions? I think nowadays a lot of people's emotions are unchecked or unhinged. So if we're going in that direction of AI bots taking over, it's like, how are humans going to react to it when, they're not there? Like, do you get super angry and, I don't know, break the bot and stuff? Like,
ooh, I don't know.
Those are the things that we have to really...
Yeah, we have to... And it kind of all circles back to, like, human relationships. Mm-hmm. Like, a lot of people are looking for that escapism kind of thing from a device because more and more they are forgetting how to have, like, meaningful, real relationships with other people. Yeah. And that's something we kind of need to hone in on and say, okay, like, as technology gets stronger and stronger and stronger, like, we have to be able to maintain our humanity and maintain, not necessarily like maintain the way of life that, our grandparents or great-grandparents engaged in, but like older people have better relationships because they grew up without, Yeah.
Or maybe people that are more experienced can relate all this experience to the bots, so the bots can AI assist the younger people. I think that's a better way of using the tools necessary to bring